Exploring theology, doctrine, and all of the fascinating subjects in between, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, Dead Men Walking starts
now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dead Men Walking podcast. I'm your host, Greg Martin. Thanks for coming along on the ride. Thanks for sharing with a friend. Thanks for checking us out at DMWpodcast.com, where you can find out more about the show, check out our snarky merch, maybe even pick up one of these Dead Men Walking podcast t-shirts. Help support the show. But first, up front, as always, we got to tell you about our sponsor, strivingforeternity.org, Andrew Rappaport. Look, this guy is a brother in the Lord. He's got a ministry for discipleship. They specialize in visiting churches all across the globe, offer weekend seminars that cover topics like evangelism, apologetics, cessationism, much, much more. They're very purposeful about helping churches of all sizes take advantage of seminars. So no matter what size your congregation is, make sure you call Striving for Eternity. You can click below on the link in the description, strivingforeternity.org. Love those guys. Yeah, guys, trying a different format here on the podcast. This is the first week. Just going to do a little intro myself, and then we'll drop you into the guest. That way guests don't have to necessarily sit through live reads and stuff like that. Sometimes they're on a tight time schedule as well too. But I just got back from where did I get back from? Lake Michigan, South Haven. Went camping for a week with my family. It was absolutely awesome. Had good weather. Spent a week at the lake. Every morning got up, did a Bible study with the kids and the wife. Had each of them pick out a passage that they wanted to discuss, and then we studied it in the morning, and then went to the lake and pretty much swam all day. Did a little downtown shopping. Great little cities on the west side of Michigan there with Lake Michigan. Had some windy days too, so we had some 4 or 5 foot waves, which is always fun to play in. But we're back, and this week we had on Sheriff Richard Mack. He is basically in the 90s, he was one of 5 guys that were named in a lawsuit, he started a lawsuit against Bill Clinton's Brady Act, and went all the way to the Supreme Court and won, and had Scalia write the opinion on the majority opinion. He's been a successful sheriff in 2 different states. Lobbyist for Owners of America, 2-time congressional candidate. I mean, the guy's really in the thick of things. And we had him on, and we wanted to discuss a couple things. We talked about the Trump assassination attempt. We talked about what the Secret Service did right and wrong, mostly wrong. He gave his professional opinion as a command officer on what they could have done differently, or why we have some questions on that. We also talked about the constitutionality of the authority of a sheriff and his organization that that helps sheriffs understand that they are the constitutional authority in their county. And if they are constitutional in the way that they rule, we can really start changing policy in the United States, kind of usurp DC and the bureaucrats and go, look at in our county, we're going to be constitutional. So we talked a little bit about that as well too. We also talked about what conservatives can do. Excuse me, got something going on with my throat here. Hold on. Take a sip out of the Dead Men Walking podcast mug. There we go. Little shameless self-promotion. You can find these at DMW Podcast as well. And we also talked about what constitutional conservatives can do policy-wise if they're not an elected official. But it was a good discussion. We originally scheduled it for about 30 minutes, but I'll tell you what, once you get Sheriff Mack going, he just keeps going and gives us good information. So we ran about 40, 45 minutes on that. So I don't want to belabor this too long. Had a good week, getting back into the rhythm of things after my vacation. And I'm going to drop you right into Sheriff Richard Mack. We just picked up, started talking about those things. Hope you enjoy it. As always, you can actually now text message us right from the description in this below. So if you want to shoot us a text on who you'd like to see on, or questions that you'd like to be asked, or guests that you have watched and have an opinion on, feel free. Just click that link. It'll shoot a text right to me, and we can get in touch. All right, guys. Next up, Sheriff Richard Mack.
And I have like the corruption that, like, Cheadle just resigned.
Yeah.
In 2013, Lois Lerner quit. She was head of a high up official in the IRS that did the corruption things about if you were Tea Party or if you had Constitution or Freedom in your name, she would not allow you to be 501c3 or tax exempt. And then she resigned. And then in 2015, Michelle Leonhardt resigned from the DEA because DEA officers and agents in Colombia were having sex parties, and the cartels provided all the money and the prostitutes.
Yeah, so we're rolling here. So let's just get into it. So you've had your eye on that, and I mean, Sheriff, successful lawsuit against Brady Act, Gun Owners of America Lobbyist, two-time congressional candidate. I mean, you're in the thick of it, and you've been defending 2A rights and calling out corruption for decades now. But Correct. The American people just don't seem to remember it or care. I mean, like you were just saying with the Lois Lerner thing, that was huge, the way they were targeting certain people on tax returns. Let's not forget the IRS. You don't pay them, they come to your door with guns and they go, okay, let's the threat of violence or jail. So you've been doing a lot of work in that and kind of exposing that corruption. And we just saw the Secret Service director resign. What are your thoughts on that and the whole Trump assassination and how the Secret Service handled that as a law enforcement agent yourself?
From day one, it looked extremely suspicious that the Secret Service completely botched the whole thing. It is so blatantly outside training protocols that, and I'm not the only one who said this, several people, even the mainstream, have now said this looks so incompetent from an agency that should not be incompetent at all and doesn't have a reputation of being incompetent, that it makes it look like it was an inside job.
Yeah.
And I'm not really into the conspiracies, because the corruption of Washington, D.C. is 10 times worse than all that we know. So we don't need to add anything to it. And I don't like to do that, especially with fellow law enforcement officials. But quite frankly, they knew this man was out there. They knew Crooks was there. And they had information that a man with a gun was there. At that point, you do not allow Trump to get to the stage. And yet he was fired at like 7 or 8 times, and they knew that this man was there. The police knew he was there. Citizens saw him up there and reported it, and yet they still did nothing. So that's what gets me. So if you're just a citizen, let's say, and you're not an expert or you're not in law enforcement, but you have a basic awareness of tactical training. I shoot 2,000 to 3,000 rounds out of my daily carry a year. I'm by no means an expert, but I'm proficient with my weapon and defense training and tactical training and things like that. But if you just have a basic understanding of how things should work, you watch those videos and you have to say either this is one of the most incompetent teams within the Secret Service or whoever set this up, or your brain has to go to some type of either conspiracy or some type of pre-knowledge or an agenda, because you look at it and you go, can you be that kind of incompetent? And I wonder if that's, they can't be that stupid. They can't. There's just no way they can be that stupid.
Yeah.
So, and then the bottom line is Cheadle was extremely arrogant, had no answers. She would not even answer how many empty casings were on the roof where Crooks fired the shots. How many did he fire? That's all they wanted to know. And she would not answer that. And she acted like, well, why did she even show up then? She did not answer anything except, there was a shooting, basically that. And when you take it from the get-go, when I was watching it the first time, I didn't like how the team is around Trump. The 6 agents, Secret Service agents, are around him. The whole idea there is that you're protecting him in a circle. You could see 2 different times One was a female agent, and she put her hand up in front of his face and head. A male officer also did the same thing. And then when they're bringing him down the stairs, they completely exposed him. If there was another shooter, Trump would have been dead. Yep. And you don't let him. The whole purpose of the Secret Service in getting around him like that is, why did they, if they're going to expose him, why did they just say, walk down to the car, we'll meet you there?
Right.
And so now another crazy thing is, just 2 days ago, 9 days after the shooting, citizens and other politicians are going to the crime scene, climbing up on the same place where Crooks was shot and killed, and where he stationed himself. And this 70-year-old congressman, all by himself, just climbed up onto the roof. And yet, my first question there was, the FBI doesn't need to secure this crime scene anymore? There's no more evidence. They're not going with metal detectors. They're not, no other analysis that now people can go and trample on the crime scene. It's like, why don't they sell tickets and have everybody come by and take a gander and climb the roof? This is so stupid. And I totally agree. I think it was Andy Biggs, my congressman from Arizona, who said, we don't want the FBI. We want an independent investigation. Yeah. And that we Congress needs to choose. We need to choose the investigators, maybe former, I would say this, get some real good former sheriffs to be part of that, to where it really is independent. But I don't trust the FBI to do it.
It's too bad too, because we have law enforcement agents like yourself who are principled, who uphold the Constitution, who obviously understand their duty to their constituents and to the citizens. And then you see some within law enforcement and in the subsidiaries of, Secret Service, FBI, things like that, that have just totally thrown that out. It seems like they have no morals or principles or no understanding of what their duly elected duty or appointed duty in some cases, which that might be the issue too, is we have a lot of bureaucrats in Washington. That's got to burn you up. So you're a successful sheriff. I wanted to talk about this a little bit because I think the listeners don't even really understand.
Let me throw one other thing in there. Let me throw about Cheadle and about Lois Lerner and then Leonhardt. This is the biggest problem, and that is the utter corruption of Washington, D.C. Yeah. Because all three of these ladies, the first female director of the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, and now Cheadle, the first female director of Secret Service, and Lois Lerner, who was a I think she was like second in command for the entire IRS. Yep. And by the way, the IRS and God-given American liberty cannot coexist. You cannot have freedom in America and have a bully organization that violates the Constitution daily to go after law-abiding Americans. And they have a tax code that can be used because it's so complicated and convoluted that they can use it any way they want to make anyone a cheater and arrest or take away your bank accounts and ruin your jobs and families. And they've been doing this for decades, and nobody in Washington, D.C. will rein them in or abolish them. And that's what should happen. They're not an American and constitutional organization. And so now we have these three ladies that have all quit in the middle of huge scandals. And this is becoming a huge scandal with the Secret Service. And all they're doing, and this is what really bothers me about the corruption of Washington, D.C. It doesn't matter if Lois Lerner quit. In fact, when she did, she raised her right arm to testify. She pleaded the Fifth Amendment, said, I haven't done anything wrong. She didn't answer another question, and she retired. And this is the arrogance and the corruption that we're dealing with. And these agents, the DEA agents, that were getting guns and gifts and money and prostitutes and parties from the cartels that they're supposed to be fighting. Dozens of agents did this for years. The article in USA Today said in March of 2015.
Yep.
They were getting all these bribes and perks and payoffs from the cartels that they're supposed to be fighting. That's about 10 felonies per agent, and none of them were punished, prosecuted, or arrested, or received any type of discipline. And the only thing that happened was Leonhardt quit. And all that happened is, this is what's going to happen with Cheadle. They'll change the name on the door. That's what happened with Lois Lerner. They changed the name on the door. Leonhardt, the same thing. And I remember Trey Gowdy pointing his finger at Leonhardt and said, "Why aren't you taking care of this? Why did you do this?" Why didn't he demand an investigation? Why didn't he demand that they be arrested? And I'm sorry, but this Washington, D.C. is so utterly corrupt that we have got to find another solution and another way for the American people to have their civil rights protected and their freedoms restored, and our God-given Constitution restored as the supreme law of the land. And that is what we are doing at the CSPOA, because Washington, D.C. has no solution or morals.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It just seems like that's the pattern. You get caught doing something illegal or unconstitutional, you resign, you wait 6 months, they change the name on the door, and then you're back in the bureaucracy. And it makes the American people it's two extremes. Either you're getting very upset and it's unrestful, or you just become apathetic to the whole thing and go, oh, well, that's Congress, that's DC. And I think that's what politics. The leading elites really want. They want you not involved, apathetic, looking the other way, shrugging your shoulders, and they get to do whatever they want and violate the Constitution on a daily basis. But tell me a little bit about the organization you just mentioned. What are you doing to fight that corruption?
Well, we got lots of stories about that too. Look, the sheriff in every county, and regrettably, there's 3 states that don't have sheriffs. Alaska and Hawaii never established the office when they came into the Union in 1959. And Connecticut, for some stupid reason, about 28 years ago, got rid of the office. They voted the office out of the state. And so now there's no elected law enforcement officer anywhere in the state, except maybe for the attorney general. But they're staunch Democrat corruption there also. And I'm not just picking on the Democrats, because Republicans are partly to blame too. It's just, this is what we get to say. Republicans aren't as bad as the Democrats. Oh, right. So whoop-de-doo, because the Republicans still have done nothing to defund Planned Parenthood. The Republicans have still done nothing to rein in the national debt. The Republicans have still done nothing to abolish these agencies that should not be in Washington, D.C. at all, that are completely contrary to the Constitution, but they still do nothing about it. And it seems like either or both parties, all they care about is money and getting reelected. And so that corruption I am fed up with. But the CSPOA, we have the solution to all of that. We can make Washington, D.C. corruption irrelevant in your county. And we actually reestablish our constitutional form of government, our constitutional republic, county by county. And we create constitutional counties with a constitutional sheriff and a group of people that are forming a posse with the sheriff under his office and his control that can be utilized however the sheriff desires. And we have that going on in several counties across the country, but we've got to do more. And we've had sheriffs during COVID-19. There were over 550 sheriffs who stood against the mandates, who refused to shut businesses down, who refused to arrest people for not wearing a mask, who stood for liberty and said, look, if you want to wear a mask, that's a personal choice. And there was no legislation passed that allowed a sheriff to arrest anyone or any other agency for that matter, but they did.
Yeah.
And Rosa Parks was arrested, and she wasn't arrested for not giving her seat to a white man. Actually, she was arrested for that. But what was the charge? There was no code on the books. There was no law saying blacks have to give their seat to a white man. That didn't exist. But it was a cultural norm, just like the COVID-19 was a cultural norm. You have to do this because, it's a mandate from the CDC, and they got it from WHO, and they got it from the United Nations. And none of that has anything to do with us. And the United Nations is not our boss. And we need to get rid of them too. But man, one major catastrophe and piece of corruption at a time. So the CSPOA is totally dedicated to training sheriffs and making sure they know and understand the Constitution and their obligation to protect the people in their county. Their job is to protect we the people from all tyranny, from all corruption, from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And it's really sad. And I mean this is sad, because the greatest threat to our God-given American liberty right now is our own federal government. And so the sheriffs have got to stand and do it. And we've had many sheriffs do it. And if I could real quickly, the tale of two sheriffs. Sheriff Cronister in Tampa, Florida, arrested Pastor Rodney Howard Brown for having church, for conducting a church service in Tampa. Then on the other hand, Sheriff Glenn Hamilton in Sevier County, New Mexico, was contacted by a pastor in his county by the name of Caleb Cooper, Pastor Cooper. And he went to the sheriff and he said, I'm not shutting down. I'm keeping my church open, and I'm wanting to know what you will do to make sure I'm protected in that. And the sheriff told him, if I have to go to jail myself, I will do everything in my power to keep you open and to protect your right to stay open. And freedom of religion, let's see, where does that line up in the Bill of Rights? Number 1.
Yeah.
And so the state came to shut him down, and the good sheriff was there, and he told the state, I have deputized every single person in that church. They are under my authority. They're staying open, and you're not doing anything to them. They left. They never came back, and Pastor Cooper was open every single Sunday, did not stop once. God bless him.
Yeah, absolutely. God bless him. We need more sheriffs like that. I like I said before, I don't think the most of the listeners even understand the constitutional authority that's been given to a sheriff in a county, to where they are the reigning supreme authority. Can you talk a little bit about that too? You just touched on it, but that's an example of a good and righteous sheriff using his constitutional authority correctly. What are some other examples that maybe that you're telling sheriffs or teaching them that they can do to make sure that they are constitutional?
Well, we're having a huge national conference to do just that. We believe that this is a very crucial, pivotal time for America. This is a seminal moment for America. Are we going to elect a very corrupt, immoral Kamala Harris, who has a history of being corrupt, who is totally corrupt, and we're going to make her president? I call her the Evita Peron of America, or Kamala. Folks, if we choose evil and we continue to support this or turn our backs on it, it's going to come back on us. And we are now watching America die. America is being destroyed from within. What are we going to do about it? And so our conference on September 7th is going to bring in sheriffs and county commissioners. We're inviting you. We want you there. And your sheriff and anybody else that you can get there out of your county commissioner. I will send you that invitation. But This is the thing, folks. Are we going to continue as a God-given constitutional American liberty and republic? Or are we going to succumb to the communist takeover that's happening right now? What's happening at the border to destroy our country from within, to give the Democrats a monopoly on elections, as they now are registering illegal immigrants, which is aiding and abetting illegal immigrants. That is criminal. Every bit of that is criminal. Of course, nobody's going to do anything about it, but we are. And so we're going to have these sheriffs come up with a resolution and declaration that they're going to sign and send. Imagine 700-800 sheriffs sending that to the federal government and to the federal agencies. There's a few things we're not going to allow in our counties ever again. Read the Bill of Rights. That will be enforced strictly in this county. And when you come into my county, we're not saying you can't come in, but when you come into my county, you check with the sheriff's office first before you do anything. We might go with you. We might not allow you to do it, but you check with us first regardless, because this is a check and balance that we will be enforcing strictly. And the reason that the sheriff is the ultimate power, ultimate law enforcement power, is because of the history of the office of sheriff. It goes over 1,000 years before even America became a country, back in old Anglo-Saxon and English law. And he was the reeve of the shire, and he later became the shire reeve, and it turned into sheriff. And the reason he is, because of the history, and the reason that he most qualifies for the ultimate CLEO, Chief Law Enforcement Officer. And that is a term that is used in law enforcement and government, but it's also used in the Brady bill, on which I filed a major lawsuit and beat it back. But the Brady bill calls the sheriffs the CLEOs, Chief Law Enforcement Officer. The Supreme Court decision that I won, with Justice Scalia writing the decision for the majority, says we are the CLEOs. He said that the CLEOs who brought this challenge, well, it was Sheriff Prince and Sheriff Mack, and 5 other sheriffs did it as well. They declared us to be the CLEOs, but that isn't even the most important part. The most important part is that we're appointed every 4 years by we the people. The ultimate power, all power is inherent in the people. We delegate all power and authority to our elected officials who we appoint, who serve at our behest. We the people also decide every criminal court case and every civil court case in this country. We are the final say. And this is what makes America so powerful and different, but it's also what makes the sheriff powerful, because he reports directly to the power source. He has no other supervisor. He has no other boss. We, the people in his county, are his boss. And then we look at his job performance every 4 years, and we decide whether to keep him or to send him on his way. Folks, that is the power of the sheriff. The chief of police, I want all of them on board. I want to work with them, but they are a bureaucrat. They're appointed, and they answer to a committee, or they answer to the town manager. And folks, the sheriff answers to you. Which one do you want?
Yeah, no, that's a great pitch. And that's exactly why we want that. I have a quick story for you that may interest you, just to kind of see what I've been dealing with. So in late 2019, like December 2019, I made a post that said I was going to, as a county commissioner, introduce a resolution as the legislative branch of the county that said that was going to make our county a sanctuary city for the Second Amendment. A little play on words there, because the sanctuary city stuff was pretty popular.
Yes,
but essentially saying that that our constituents had the right to bear arms, correct? Right.
Correct.
So I introduced it in January of 2020. We had 2 Democrats and some
by the way, what state?
Michigan.
Okay. Oh,
and
wow.
and some Republicans that didn't really like how how hot topic the 2A is. They just like doing the budget and kind of being in the background. Long story short, worked with the 2 Democrats on the board and the Republicans, and I wouldn't give up. We had 200-300 people coming to our meetings saying this needs to be put through. The chairman had no had to put it on the agenda. And we worded it in a way to where the Democrats also wanted, well, any unlawful act. And I said, in any unconstitutional act. And essentially what we did is we said, if the sheriff of our county engages in any unlawful or unconstitutional act, we'll just take away their $28 million budget since we preside over the purse strings.
Right.
I thought I was putting it through for Second Amendment. What happened 3 months later is we go into lockdown in March. It passed with, I think, a 7-2 vote. It passed. And in March, we go into lockdowns, and we have a call with our sheriff, and he's a fair-minded sheriff. And he said, look, you guys just passed something that said, if I do something unconstitutional, I don't have a budget. And I don't see any laws on the books. And right now, the lockdowns by Gretchen Whitmer are being challenged as unconstitutional. I'm not going to enforce the arrests and the ticketing and all that for the 6 foot spacing. So what I started as something that was for 2A, really 3 months later turned into something totally different that was unconstitutional. So I tell you that story just to say, look at it. It wasn't a law. It was more, it is a legislative law in the county, but it was at the purse string. So I'm glad to hear that you're inviting county commissioners to this event as well, too, because they preside over the budget of the sheriffs, and the sheriffs need money to do what they need. Now, I think what you're doing, this was a stopgap really, but what you're doing, I think is much more important of actually changing the mindset of the sheriffs of this is what you need to do constitutionally. But the county commissioners.
I have one question for you on that though.
Yeah.
After the sheriff works with you to establish his budget, is it lawful for you to pull it back and resend it and take it back and take it away?
Oh, well, 100%. In the state of Michigan, we can't tell we have a line item budget for him, but we can't tell him what to do with the money, but we're the ones who approve whether he gets the money or not. So we can absolutely
after you approve that, you can take it away
the next year, every annual year.
So, okay. You're right there. Okay, good.
Yeah. So we approve it.
Sure.
Yeah, let's say we improve it November of 1 year, of the month. It goes into effect January 1.
You're right there.
The very next year, correct. We could go through line by line and say, look, we're pulling for this, we're pulling for that, we're not funding for that. And it's a check and balance, right?
It is, no question.
But I just thought
make his own budget, and nobody else in the county can make their own budget without going through the process with the county commissioners. Very true.
Right. Now, once he makes that budget and he puts funds to certain programs or whatever, we can't go in and go, well, we don't like it. But next year we can say, hey, there's going to be a financial hit on that budget because we don't want you to fund whatever this program is or do whatever. So it's more of a fiscal threat. I don't want to use the word threat, but it's a checks and balance of, hey, look, you get to run your budget and you have the money and you have the ultimate authority, but we're duly elected panel of 9 that represents the county that says, are we going to fund that out of the taxpayer money? But I just thought that'd be an interesting story for you when I heard you say also county commissioners are invited there because they do have to work hand in hand, I believe.
How many commissioners would go to our meeting in Orlando on September 7th?
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe 1 or 2. We're a whole board of Republican county commissioners, but what does that mean anymore? Well, what does the word Republican mean? Unfortunately, I mean, there's middle of the road, there's Rhino,
We'll invite them all, and we'll invite your sheriff as well.
All right, I like that. So as we finish this up here too, and it sounds like what you're doing is something that conservatives can do. But outside of elected officials, I was just wondering, as someone who's been in the fight for a long time for 2A, for constitutionality, all those things, what can truly constitutional conservatives do to help sway the liberal tide in America today? Because we are seeing, like you said, federal government, bureaucracy, the progressive far left that is just insanity, which I think the pendulum might be swinging back because you see a lot of secular outlets, like even in comedy and stuff, understanding the absurdity of DEI and word policing and things like that. But what can constitutionalists do outside of the elected office to help sway that liberal tide?
Well, we, the people, need to get involved in this, and every county must do it. In fact, Jefferson warned us that if we're ignorant, we will never be free. So if you expect to be ignorant and free, you expect what never was and what never will be. We, the people, have got to wake up and get involved in this. And we've got to put people in office that are, just as you said, constitutionalists. If you swear an oath in God's name to uphold and defend the Constitution and then summarily ignore it or wittingly violate it, you should not be in office. You should be removed from office. And there should be something established that's that way. And it's actually, it already is. It's already, that's perjury. And you promise to uphold and defend the Constitution, then you don't, and you do just the opposite. And then you promote gun control or anything else that's unconstitutional and forcing people to wear a mask. Now, we had 550 sheriffs across the country that stood against this, but that's only a small percentage. I mean, that's 1/6 of the sheriffs in the nation. We're trying to get at least 1/3 now that will be part of this. If we get some county commissioners and 1/3 of the sheriffs, if we can get 1/3 of the county commissioners in the country and 1/3 of the sheriffs to start promoting what you tried to do, not just on the Second Amendment sanctuary, but establish constitutional counties, that we will enforce the Bill of Rights, that we will defend the Constitution. Do you know all of that's doing? Do you know what we're talking about here, folks? It's restoring the civil rights movement. These are the civil rights. Your civil rights are protected and guaranteed within the Bill of Rights, but only if there are elected officials and others in government that will stand and defend those and defend you and protect you from tyranny and corruption. If government becomes so venal and oppressive that the American people have no place else to turn, what do you think is going to happen? That frustration is going to create violence. And folks, if you cannot turn to your sheriff, who you appointed and elected, for peace, safety, protection, and liberty, then we have no place else to go. There is no solution in Washington, D.C., and I don't care who gets elected. We can only judge the past, but by the future, as Patrick Henry said in his famous Give Me Liberty speech. Where are you going to turn? And so I just, I really hope that Trump gets in. We need Trump in there so we can have some sort of relief in Washington, D.C., which he will provide. But are they going to ever let him be president? Are they going to ever leave him alone? I mean, he just got shot at, should have been killed. What would we be going through as a country right now if Trump's funeral just happened 2 or 3 days ago?
Yeah.
What would his family be going through? What would we be going through? What would our country look like? Would there be any hope left in anyone's heart? And yet look at the people that have made fun of Trump because of it. Even the bandage that he had on his ear, for heaven's sakes, they criticized that, made fun of him for that. And the guy that was on tour with Jack Black left the tour because the guy with him on the tour said, it's too bad that guy wasn't a better shot.
Yeah.
And that we have murder in our hearts, folks. I could not stand Barack Obama, but I never wanted any harm to come to him. I couldn't stand Bill Clinton. I sued the Clintons, and I sued the Clinton administration and won a case at the U.S. Supreme Court. I have a review of the case right here. I keep it handy with my pocket Constitution. And folks, this little book is the most powerful book you can get anywhere. Go to my website and get a bunch of those.
Supreme Court case for state sovereignty, it says. Yeah.
This is our Supreme Court victory. It's the most powerful 10th Amendment, states' rights, state sovereignty, local autonomy case in the world, in world history, in the history of America. And sheriffs did this. Sheriffs have done more for the Second Amendment and the 10th Amendment than all of Congress in the past 100 years. And here's the result. And you need to get this and you need to read this. Let me tell you one quote. Scalia said this. He quoted this from another Supreme Court case, New York v. U.S., that happened in 1992. Ours went to the Supreme Court in 97. And he said this: we have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Don't you wish your state legislature knew that?
Yeah.
And if we're going to get this back, state sovereignty and states' rights, and this decision are backing that all up, which says we stand against the tyranny and oppression of the federal government. And folks, let's be real clear here. Who formed the federal government? The states did.
Yeah.
We did. And we delegated them certain powers. And now they have gone outside those limitations and those powers that we delegated to them. And if we delegate something, we can take it back. They are our servant, not the other way around. The federal government didn't form us. They didn't form the states. We formed them. And we gave them about 39 assignments, 39 powers that they have. And they only have 5 law enforcement authorities and powers. 5. Treason, counterfeiting, felonies committed on the high seas, or piracies. They are required by law, by the supreme law, to protect our borders from invasion. That is a law enforcement authority.
Yep.
And then laws against violations of treaties that we have with other countries. 5 law enforcement authorities. They have stolen and usurped thousands of them. Even creating a new justice system. If you get charged with a crime, a hate crime or something in your state, and you're found not guilty, the federal government come in and pull you to Washington and try you again for the same crime there. That's against the law. It's double jeopardy. And folks, we have got to turn this around. We have got to have you on board. I'm asking each of you to go to our website, CSPOA, Constitutional Sheriffs Peace Officers Association, and join the CSPOA posse at cspoa.org. Become a member, pay your little dues, help us stay going, help us fund our conference in Orlando on September 7th. We've got to have funding for that. We're just pushing this in the blind, praying that the miracle will happen, that some major donors will help us make this happen. Folks, this is a last-ditch effort for America. We have to do this. The sheriffs can help us take back America county by county. You can help your sheriff do that. And you can help us help him do that. And so This is all of us. Again, we the people pledging to each other our lives, our fortunes, and sacred honor, just as the founders did. The last line of the Declaration of Independence, because they said in there, the purpose of all government is to protect our God-given rights, our civil rights. Is there an organization in America standing up for civil rights today? The CSPOA is, and don't tell me the NAACP is. They're not.
Right.
They are a branch of the Democrat Party, and that's it. You don't ever hear them pushing civil rights. Never. Do you hear them does the NAACP say anything about a black man who's arrested for mere possession of a gun? They never do anything about that. It is his civil right. It is a right guaranteed in the Bill of Rights, Second Amendment. And folks, we've got so much work to do, and we got about 2 months to do it.
All right. Well, we'll make sure we link up everything here. So if you're listening to this right now, folks, you can click right on through in the description. It'll have everywhere for the conference and for the organization and all that stuff. Sheriff Richard Mack, thanks so much for being here today. Before we wrap this up, you want to give us any, since you're in the thick of it, any predictions on the election in November? What are you thinking? Because they tried to take Trump out. I think I have more thoughts on that, which we won't go back into that. I think I'm probably a little more conspiratorial on what happened there just by looking at the evidence. But going into November, we have Kamala Harris, who, let's remember, the Democrats said they're the party of democracy, and they usurped the process for their candidate now 2 years in a row, pushing out Bernie last run, and now just crowning Kamala. What do you think Trump's chances are? What would you say to people who are listening right now who maybe are voting for the first time or possibly thinking about switching their vote?
we will have to come out in droves for Trump.
Yeah.
And if we don't, their cheating is going to take over again. They will lie, cheat, steal, or murder if they have to stay in power. Washington warned us against a two-party system, said it would be the bane of American liberty. It has done that and worse. Folks, there is a peaceful and effective solution, and you better find it with your sheriff. Join us in this holy cause, and we'll fight to make this happen together. There's no guarantee of victory, but what did the good Lord say to John Quincy Adams? Duty is ours, results are God's. Folks, let's do our duty and leave the rest to him.
Awesome. I love it. Sheriff Richard Mack, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We appreciate you. And anytime you'd like to come back on, you're more than welcome to
send me the link and we'll post it too.
I appreciate it. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of Dead Men Walking Podcast. As always, you can find us on dmwpodcast.com or anywhere on social media. We appreciate your suggestions, your feedback, sharing with a friend. That's how we grow. That's how we bring glory to God. Remember, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. God bless. Be sure to check us out at dmwpodcast.com, where you can purchase the best and snarkiest merch on the internet, support the show, and leave us a review or message. Dead Men Walking can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Dead Men Walking Podcast, and on Twitter X at Real DMW Podcast. The Dead Men Walking Podcast is part of the Fight Laugh Feast Network. For exclusive show content, be sure to download the Pub TV app and become a member. If you're a business that needs to reach hundreds of thousands of potential customers in your demographic, podcast advertising might be for you. Send all inquiries to deadmenwalkingpodcast@gmail.com.
None your biscuits.